technical session 1, Introduction to Statistical Tool and Data Analysis. I'm happy to introduce today's resource person, Professor Somasundaram. Professor Somasundaram is an assistant professor in management studies and coordinator for Center for Soft Skill Training at Kristu Jayanti College. Sir have 15 years of teaching experience and also have corporate experience as a HR recruiter in Troy Management Consultant, Chennai. He is well versed in handling statistical software packages for data analysis in research area and have given a hands-on training programs on data analysis for faculties and research scholars. As an academician and a trainer, he had delivered guest lectures on various topics on management studies in different places and acted as a resource person and trainer for various programs to the students, corporate executives, and teachers. It's a great privilege to invite our Professor Somasundaram for this session. I now request Sir to take over the session. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your introduction. Good evening to all the participants. First of all, I'd like to thank the management and the department, heads and program coordinators and the organizing team for giving this a wonderful opportunity to handle the session on Introduction to Statistical Tools as well as factor analysis tool. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity first of all. And at this outset, I like to welcome all the participants from various parts of the country for enthusiastic participation and showing interest in learning something about the data analysis. Okay, so thank you all participants, and we hope that for all next 7 days, definitely you will be having a very good learning experience, and we hope that we give you that 70 to 80%. Definitely you will learn something very important, which is important for your research part. Okay, so with this, we will directly move on to the session. I don't want to waste the time. So first I'll start sharing the screen. So the screen is visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, so welcome you all for this 7 days national workshop on data analysis using SPSS. This is the agenda. I hope you are already seen this agenda in the brochure. Just this is to remind you that what are the things that we are going to cover for the next 7 days. So as it is a day 1, we are going to cover only the basic things about what is called statistics. Because we can do analysis in the SPSS. Okay, what are the data you give? And definitely the SPSS will give you the output. But before giving the data, okay, we should have some basic knowledge about what kind of data is required for doing certain analysis. What kind of variables are very important to do a certain analysis. So like that, we have the basic information and the basic concept where you need to understand what kind of statistical tool I need to do an analysis. Which tools is very important for which kind of a data, which kind of a variable. That is very, very important. So as a day 1, today I am going to cover the basic concept of what is called statistics and what are the tools are there under the statistics and what kind of analysis you can do for which type of data, which type of variables. Right. So with that, day 1, we are going to start the basic things. So today you will not be having any hands-on training, but this is a very important session. Okay, you need to learn because when you are started doing some chi-square test or t-test or factor analysis, you should know that what type of data I should have for which type of variable I can able to do this. So to understand that, today's session will be very, very important. So with this agenda, we will start our today's session. So as a day 1, I'm going to cover the introduction to statistical tools and data analysis. Right. So with that, I'll just go through that. What is the agenda of today's session? So first, I'll start with what is statistics. Basically, most of the people would know that what is called statistics, right? But I'm just going to throw a light on that which type of statistics is very important for which kind of research, right? And what is called variable, what are different types of variables are required to do a statistical analysis, and what are different types of data, at the same time scale, right? Because the variables what we are using in our research, all the variables are measured with a certain scale, right? So what type of scales is required for what type of analysis? It's a very important topic, and we'll be discussing about what are the different statistical tests are there, right? We have parametric and non-parametric. Already you all learned all those things. I'm just going to give you an overview of all those things. And the p-value, significance, all our statistical result output what we get through the SPSS software, we will be interpreting only through the p-value. It is also called as a significant value, right? We are not going to compare anything with the statistical table or any other data. Whatever the output you are going to get in the statistical output, from that only p-value will be used to interpret our hypothesis. And we'll be discussing about what are the different analyses are there. We have a univariate analysis, bivariate, multivariate analysis, and finally the SPSS user manual, right? So these are the things we are going to cover at today's session. So first we will start with what is statistics, right? So basically everyone knows about what is called statistics, right? So you may think that it's a part of some calculation, and it deals with some data, and it needs some a huge calculation, huge analysis. It needs some functions, it needs some formula. Yes, all those things are right, right? But why statistics is very very important for research work? Why? Because see, if you give us some set of data, right, which is limited set of data like 10 to 50 or 100, we can able to do analysis, right? So from the data what we collected like 50 or 100, we can able to do a percentage analysis using Excel itself, right? We can manually, we can go for a calculation. But for the research work, especially if when you are doing a research for our PhD work or a thesis, definitely we have to deal with a large number of data, right? We will not dealing with only with the 50 or 100. Minimum we will go with 300 to 500 samples, right? So when you want to deal with the huge number of data, in that cases we need a statistical tool, right? So statistical, right, it's like not only dealing with the data and the information, right? The data that you are using, right, it should be properly tabulated, right? Giving a proper coding, proper value, proper label for those data what you collected through your questionnaire. That should be properly tabulated and it should be properly recorded, where you have to ensure that all the questions has been responded by the people or not. Because if any one data is missing, that comes under the missing category, right? We cannot able to conclude the things, or we cannot give a meanings for the data that we have collected only for 10 people, right? We need huge number of data where we need to interpret in a proper way, right? So statistics deals with the huge number of data, and those data should be tabulated, should be given a proper coding, and it should be properly analyzed. Analysis part is very very important, right? You can say that, sir, I have collected samples from 200 employees, 300 employees. In that 200, 300, 150 are male, 150 are female, you can say. But if you want to show in an analytical way, like with the help of percentage, what is the average, what is the deviation, what is the variance, what is the range, and how I'm going to project that data in a single chart, and how I'm going to interpret the data with the help of the numeric factors through statistical analysis, I can use a basic statistical tool called descriptive statistics. I can use those statistics to interpret that what is the average age of the employees in the company. Okay, which category of people are there in the company, male or female, right? I can able to give a meaning for the data what I collected. So for that purpose, definitely you need to apply a statistical tool, right, which gives you a exact way of meaning or interpretation for the data what you collected, right? When we are collecting the data, we are dealing with the raw data. Okay, with the raw data we can give n number of information, but the right way of giving a interpretation meaning to the data and making it in a crispy manner to make the people to understand this is what from the data what we collected. For that purpose, definitely you need to deal with the statistics. So statistically, basically, it deals with analysis part as well as the way you are interpreting. Right, that is called a statistics. Right. So here in statistics, you may think, sir, statistics is a one branch of or one part of mathematics or whatever it is. But under statistics, we have a different division which will be used in the various sector for various parameters and various dimensions. Okay, but for our research part, since we are all on a teaching a field and we are into the research field, okay, so we will be dealing with the three major division of statistics. There are five major divisions are there. Out of that five, we will be dealing with the three divisions of statistics, right? So I'll be discussing one by one. First important thing is descriptive statistics. This is the first part, the first division of statistics. Why we need this statistics? Because as I already told you, when we are dealing with a huge number of data, okay, we have to summarize in a single table, or we have to summarize, we have to write the interpretation in a short manner. We cannot write a more story, right? So we have to make it in a short form, and we have to put entire data, entire demographic factors into a single table, right? So for that, descriptive statistics will be helpful. This is a basic statistic. It's like a summarizing your data and describing. You may ask 10 to 12 questions under demographic factors. You are asking about their gender, you're asking about their marital status, you're asking about their qualification, experience, income, family size, okay, the income that you're spending, right, their name, or sometimes if it is needed for your research work, you may ask their information, biodata like height, weight, whatever it is. So if you want to conclude or if you want to summarize the entire data into a single table, descriptive statistics is a very, very important thing. So with that single table, either editor or the when you're sending your article for the journal, you can able to understand that who is your target audience, which category of people you are targeted, right? So you can able to understand with a single table, right? So for that, descriptive statistics is very, very important. Of course, most of the UG project, okay, as deals with the descriptive. Usually students will do a percentage analysis, right? They will do manually, right? So along with the percentage analysis, they can able to do an average. They can able to calculate the mean value. They can able to calculate the standard deviation. They can able to calculate the variance. They can able to calculate the range, minimum and the maximum. All these things comes under the descriptive statistics. At the same time, you want to know whether your data is normally distributed or not. Okay, whether it is in a proper bell-shaped curve. You will learn under the for testing the significance between the variables, right? You will be learning all those in the statistics. In that, a bell-shaped curve, it shows that it's normally distributed. Even those things also we can able to interpret with the help of the skewness and kurtosis value, what you are getting from the descriptive statistics analysis. So this is a basic analysis. This is a mandatory for all the articles as well as for all the research work. Whenever you are dealing with the data, you may do a factor analysis, you may do correlation, you can do a multiple regression, all those things, but without giving a summary of your data, you will not go move to the further analysis. So this is a basic thing. And the second important thing is, sir, my research work deals with more number of dependent, independent variable, and I want to find out the association, I want to find out the relationship, and I want to prove, especially when you're going for comparative study, when you're going for finding out the relationship of one variable with respect to another variable. In those cases, right, so according to your variables, you can define, you can decide what statistics and method I'm using. In that cases, you need to use analytical statistics, which talking about to find out the relationship or the associations between the variable what you are used in your research work. Right? You may identify the lot of variables through the literature review. With the help of the literature review, I want to find out, is there any relationship between these two variables, or how much influence this variable is influencing on the other variable. Whether is this significant, whether is this association. In that case, we will be using analytical statistics, where under analytical statistics, we will be using a correlation and regression tools. Right? And the third one is inductive statistics. Right? This is a statistics which will be deals with the most of the FMCG companies, right, to forecast about their sales. by predicting what will happen based on the data what they are available, like previous data, previous month sales data, okay, previous month production data. Based on that, they can able to forecast, or they can able to come out with a some plan. Okay, how much is possible in the upcoming days or in the upcoming year. In that cases, inductive statistics is very very important. Right here, the data is like a partial data. You have some information. With that information, you can improve or you can develop or you can predict. And if it is okay, then you can able to say that this is proved or this is not proved. And the fourth important statistic is called as inferential statistics. This is what very very important. Sir, I did the analysis. Most of the people, right, where they'll be lacking in what is the information or how I need to conclude for this output table. Many people will be very good in doing the analysis, but sir, from this output table, how I need to interpret, which value I need to look, and I need to give a meaning for the data, or by using which value I need to conclude my hypothesis. So inferential statistics is very very important, right? So once you analyze the variable, right, you are analyze the variable and you have come out with the data set. After that, you can decide, so this for this variable, okay, I want to frame the hypothesis and I want to test if this is true or false. Right? In that case, inferential statistics is very, very important. Right? For most of the inferential statistics, right, we will be framing the hypothesis, and based on the significant value, which is also called as a p-value, we will be giving a meaning to the particular variable or the particular hypothesis. All right, that is called as the inferential statistics. Clear? And the last one, there is a fifth word division of statistics called as the applied statistics. This is applicable to the industry. Most probably, the production department or going for a sample survey, and the companies which is doing a quantitative decision. Okay, especially in the business decision making process or business analytical process, they'll be using this applied statistics. All right, so especially for the quality control, if you take a production department and a production department to maintain the quality, to bring the standard in the quality, they'll be using all the quality control chart, which is called as a P chart, C chart, NP chart. These are the chart which comes under the quality control techniques, right? To use this, they'll be using this applied statistics, right? So these are all the 5 divisions of statistics are available, right? So in this 5, out of this 5, most probably the social science research, right, we'll be using descriptive, analytical, and inference. That means we need summarize for our data what we collected, and to prove our hypothesis, we need to do a lot of significant tests, whether it is associated or not associated, whether it is related or not related, whether it is highly relationship or not, which which variable is influencing on the other variable, what is the cause and effect. All these things will be identified with the help of the significant test. Based on that, we will be giving a interpretation. That interpretation will be given based on the hypothesis that you have framed, right? We cannot give an interpretation just like that. We can give the interpretation based on the value what you got in the statistical output table. But to give a meaning for that, whether it is accepted or not accepted, whether it is associated or not associated, whether it is significant or not significant, it is purely based on the hypothesis what you have framed. Without framing the hypothesis, you cannot give the interpretation. That means you cannot give a conclusions or the meaning for the data what you are collected and what is the analysis that you have done. Only the output table will be there, but you may not know what to do with that output table, right? For that, inferential statistics very very important. So this is what the different divisions of statistics are available. All right. So clear. So now next we'll move on to the variables part. Sir, I'm okay with SPSS already. I know what kind of analysis I can able to do in the SPSS. There are a lot of analysis other than the SPSS, right? But it is not like whatever the analysis you will do, the SPSS will give the output. But do you know that whether it is the right way to do the particular analysis, or whether it is the right way to interpret? It is purely based on the first important parameter called variable. Without knowing what kind of a variable, you cannot able to do a analysis, right? So we will be discussing a different variables here. Okay, if you take any research, if you're framing any hypothesis, definitely you will be framing hypothesis, you will be preparing a questionnaire only based on this 9 type of variables. right? So you'll be discussing. So variable is a one important thing which used to measure your research. So what is your research outcome? Sir, I want to measure the job satisfaction level, or I want to measure the customer perceptions towards online food delivery, or towards uh, two-wheelers, or towards electronic bike, right? So that variable you are going to measure. Okay, so if you want to you measure that particular variable, if you want to give interpretations whether it has influencing or not, whether the perception is changed or not, whether the perception towards many factors or not, to prove that you need a variable. So we will be having a different variables which we got from the literature review. We cannot frame our variables by ourselves, which is already proved in a certain literature. From that literature review, we will be finding out what are the variables is required for your research topic, and based on that you will be framing your research framework will be there, and based on that you can frame a research model, and you can find out which variables is influenced by which variable. Under that you may list out various items to measure that. So for example, I want to measure the level of satisfaction of the working environment. So work environment is a one important variable. That work environment, okay, will be having a different dimensions. Whether I want to measure the internal work environment, external work. For example, you want to do this research on sales executive. Your target responder is sales executive. So most of the sales executives will be both internal and external. They'll be working inside the company as well as outside the company, right? In that cases, which kind of working environment you are satisfied. For that satisfaction, if you want to measure the satisfaction, I am just measuring the satisfaction with few attributes or few category called highly satisfied, satisfied, moderate, dissatisfied. So you need to analyze that what are the variables are using for your research work, right? So here there are 9 types of variables are there, right? We will go one by one. There are some variables which you are familiar already. The first one is a dependent variable, which is also called as a criterion variable. Most probably the variables which you are going to measure, the outcome variable, of course, those variables will be a dependent variable. That means, so this particular satisfaction level, the customer perception is influenced by so and so factors, or is depend upon the those variables or those factors, right? Similarly, the second important one is independent variable, which is also called as a predictor variable. Right, it will not depend or it will not change. For example, if you take age, okay, we cannot compare age with any one of the demographic factors. We cannot determine, we cannot say that age is depend upon the color, age is depend upon your physical appearance, right? All these things we can't able to compare. That is comes from the independent variable, a variable which stands alone and does not give any variations or does not influence by anything. Okay, and the third one is discrete variable, right? When you are dealing with the quantitative data, especially when you're talking about the marks, or when you're asking your questions as an open-ended question, you're not giving any choices, you're not giving any attributes, you're not making as a grouping variable, you're just ask the questions as a open-ended question. So in that cases you will get a quantitative variable, 40, 30, 20, 50. All right, so that comes as the discrete variable which talks about the numbers in quantitative. All right. This is most probably when you want to measure the, for example, there are some research work, right? They'll be doing research work about the students' perceptions or students' knowledge or skills towards the training, towards the any other spoken class, whatever test. So in that cases, they'll be conducting some test, pre-test posters before training. What is the score of all the students? In the comprehensive test or in the verbal test, and after the training what is the scores. In that cases they'll be going for discrete variable, right? Because they need exact marks, and they'll be comparing those marks pre and post test, and they'll be doing a parity test, that is there any difference in their marks, okay, before and after the training. In that cases discrete variable they'll be doing. And the fourth one is a continuous variable. Of course, if you want to get the exact output or the exact result, right? So I want to use the data, okay, with the decimals, right? So in that cases, you'll be using a continuous variable, especially if you are getting a scores, right? So instead of rounding the marks, I want to get the exact mark, 45.37, so that I can able to conclude, I can able to get the ranking position of all the students based on the marks, because Some students may be in the same rank, but they may differ in the point. So in that cases, I need the data with after decimal also. In that case, you can go for the continuous variables, right? Especially for the ranking, right? And the fifth one is the qualitative variables. Your variables will be measured, okay, with the qualitative attributes, no numerical, no count, no numbers, right? And the sixth one is the quantitative variables, which is measured in terms of number, of course, marks, okay, of course, the height, and then the weight, okay, all these things comes under the quantitative variables, all right? And the seventh one is mediating variable or intervening variable. This is one of the important variable nowadays. Most of the research scholars are using, because we are familiar with what is dependent, what is independent, qualitative, quantitative, discrete, all those things. But now most of the research scholars, most of the research works dealing with the mediating variable, moderating variable. These two variables are very important, okay, which shows your contribution towards your research. Because most probably for our research work, when we are using some 6 to 7 variables for research work, hardly 5 variables are already tested, already proved. Only 1 or 2 variables may be from our side. Based on our theoretical support, we will be telling you that this is the variables I'm going to introduce in my research work. I'm going to make it as a part of my research work. So in that cases, you can show those variable as a mediating variable as well as a moderating variable. So what is called mediating variable? See the example. Through the example, you can able to understand. I have one variable called higher education, and I have another variable called income. If I educated, right, I can get good job, I can earn income, fine. But there is a variation in the income, right? For example, if we are completed post graduation, right, and all those things, and we are working in the institution. The same person who has done the post graduation is working in the corporate. Both the people's qualifications are same, post graduated, but their income is depend upon the designation, depend upon the job. But it is not like what we are earning is similarly the corporate people also earning. It's differ based on our designation. So here the designation is one of the important variable, mediating variable, right? So the presence of variable is influencing. It is caused by the independent variable as well as dependent variable, right? If I educated, definitely I can able to get a good income. Okay, if I'm in a good position, definitely I can able to get a good income. So your occupation, your designation is influencing both dependent as well as independent variable. It is not like you are not educated, but we are giving a good designation to you so that you will earn an income. No, your designations depend upon your qualification. At the same time, your designations also determines your salary. It is based on your experience, based on the place where you are working, based on the level of the management. So it's influencing both the dependent variable, mediating variable, intervening. It is disturbing both the variable, right? That is comes under the mediating variable, or it is called as the intervening variable. Clear? Now the eighth one is a control variable or constant variable, which is most probably used in the scientific research, right? So already in the scientific research, they have proved after doing this experiment, after setting the rheostat or the resistant at this level for the experiment, you will get this level, this value. All these things are standard. It is set. It is proved. With that constant variable, you can do and you can prove other research also, right? But the next one is the ninth important variable is moderator variable. Right here, the moderator variable, the variable will change. Both the relationship between the dependent and the independent variable will be changed or will be disturbed because of what? Moderator variable. It will be the moderator which disturbs both, whereas in the mediating, it influencing both. Right. So, for example, see the relationship. If you want to find the relationship between the library and the performance of the students, library you have, and then the students, they are started preparing for the exam, right? So the performance of the students and the library, you want to measure the relationship, right? It has been influenced by the term called interest. If you are interested, you will visit the library facilities. which will be improve your performance, right? It is not like it is influencing directly the performance. If you are interested only, you will go to the library facilities, or you will go to the library and you will go through some books and you will be performing good in the examination. If you are not interested, definitely you will not visit the library at all, and because of that you will get less marks in the exam, right? That comes under the moderator variable, right? So the mediating and moderating variable are the recent variables which is used by the most of the research scholars in their article to prove their what is their contribution towards the research. And all the other variables are like it's a standard variable. Definitely when we are doing any research work, when we are going through the any literature review, we need to identify certain variables like dependent, independent, qualitative, quantitative. All these things are mandatory, but apart from that, if you have any theoretical support, you can introduce those variable like a moderator or mediating variable, and you can prove your research study, right? So this is all the variables are very important. And next thing is the data, right? So what are the data what we are collected through the questionnaire, right? So we'll be having a different data sets with us. So here data are classified in a two category, qualitative and then the quantitative, which is also called as non-metric data or metric data. Here non-metric data you can categorize. You are collecting the data by categorizing the things, having a lot of attributes. It is nothing but the choices, right? Here non-metric data or the qualitative data can be measured with the two type of scales called nominal scale or ordinal scale. All right, nominal scale or ordinal scale. Whereas a metric data or numerical data can be measured with the help of the interval scale and then the ratio scale. Here, most of our social science research will be deal with the nominal scale and the ordinal scale. Right, interval scale, ratio scale is depend upon the variables what we are using, what we need for research work. Sometimes some scholars may use their age or salary or the expenses, okay, asking them as a open-ended questions, or asking them by giving the different choices within the group. Accordingly you can do the analysis, right? So most probably we will be coming using under the category of non-metric data, and then the metric quantitative deals about the interval and the ratio scale. So under this, which are the scales comes under the nominal scale? What is that ordinal? What is that interval? What is the ratio? This is very important, because when we are doing analysis in the SPSS, there is a one column called scale. You have to define what type of scale it is. Without defining that scale, when you are doing analysis part, the output that you are getting may be right or may be wrong, and you cannot able to give a proper interpretation. And sometimes when you are doing some analysis, the analysis part will not give the output at all, because it will show error that you have choose a certain scale which is not applicable, right? It is all depend upon your variable and then the data sets, right? So now we will discuss what is that nominal ordinal. So nominal, right, it is deals only with the characteristics, okay, which has a category like a gender, martial status, right? And then some other factors, right, employment. Whereas ordinal, it deals with the range of scales like greater than, less than, okay, going for a rating and ranking 1 to 10. Okay, 1 is very least, 10 is more important or higher than that, right? So that comes the ordinal. Here ordinal scale, you can define your scale based on your variables and the data set, or based on your theoretical support. You may use a 5-point scale, you may use a 3-point scale, you may use a 7-point scale, but most probably 5 to 7-point scale is a common, is a standard scale used by most of the research scholars. Okay, and because it is already proved and it is already tested, so it is very easy to go with that, right? Whereas the metric data, it deals with the internal interval ordinal properties, okay, having a equal differences between the two scale points. Similarly, the ratio deals with the interval scales properties with having a natural 0 point like 0 to 10, okay, and then 11 to 20, having a equal differences, weight, height. Or sometimes when you are grouping that, you may ask the grouping data with 0 to 10, all those things. Otherwise, sometimes they may ask us open-ended question, so they will give the data directly, okay. So this is what the non-metric and metric data. So next we'll have an explanation. See, it will be very clear now. So nominal data, they'll be using only the category. right? No numerics, only the category will be there. And the ordinal scales, okay, depend upon the scale, okay, whether you are using a 5-point scale or 7-point scale, accordingly you can define. There are many scale instruments are there. Most probably we know Likert scale, but apart from that, there are different scale instruments are there. Each scale instrument is defined now. If you are asking questions with a strongly agree, okay, moderate, satisfied, dissatisfied, okay, relevant, most relevant, likely, most likely. If they are using those things, accordingly you have a different scale items are there. You can choose those items, okay, with the theoretical support. And the interval scales, okay, which is talking about the equal intervals, okay, where the differences between the two values, the lower and upper limits will be the same, okay, for all the ranges of data. And the ratios, it starts with the 0 point for the scales, and it will be having a equal ratios will be between the two variables, right? So most probably we will be dealing with nominal as well as the ordinal. Okay, intervals, it's based on the variables what we are used. Sometimes we may ask with group category, we may not ask with the category. It's like an open-ended question. Accordingly, you can choose, right? So these four scales are very, very important to do a statistical analysis. Okay. Now, see, so what are the analysis I can do under the nominal? So nominal scale, this is a usual nominal scale. We'll be having a category, ordinal scales, 5-point scale or 7-point scale or 10-point scale. Intervals, like it may be a direct questions, okay, or ratio scales, height, weight, all those things. So these are the basic examples of nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Accordingly, you can, okay, you can choose what scales we are using for our data, right? And now, accordingly, so this is an example, right? Male, female, what is your hair color, okay, which locations you are living, all these things are comes under nominal because your variables are measured with category. Whereas ordinals, you may use 1 to 5 scales or 1 to 7, 1 to 10. Accordingly, you can define your scales items. And similarly, the intervals, okay, the differences should be the same. So these are the basic things about the measurement scale. And accordingly, you can use this analysis. So this is a statistics, sir. For nominal scale, what are the statistics I can use? So you can basically can go with the descriptive statistics. Under descriptive statistics, you can show the frequency distribution. You can show all the central tendency and central dispersion like mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance. You can do a chi-square test. Okay, you can do a Kramer's or contingency test. Whereas if you come to the non-parametric test, okay, you can go for a two-tailed chi-square test. You can go for a run test. You can go for a binomial. You can go for a quotient test. All those things, right? You know, right? Parametric and non-parametric test. When the data are normally distributed, go with the parametric test. If data are not normally distributed, you can go with the non-parametric test, right? That is based on the Kolmogorov-Simrow test value. Okay, if it is, we will go through that one by one when you're joining the upcoming sessions, right? So accordingly, you can choose whether I can use a parametric or non-parametric. Similarly, if you take ordinal, right? When you're asking about the ordinal scales for your questionnaires or for your variables, you can choose median. Okay, you can go for an interquartile range. You can go for a rank order correlation, especially when you're asking the certain questions and asking the respondents to rank in order. For example, you listed some 10 factors. Which factors you are giving priority or you're ranking, okay, for a very good customer service for the online food delivery. So you can list out payment, delivery process or delivery method, quality, types of dish, types of restaurants. You can ask the respondents to rate which is first rank according to you. Like that, you can rate. So if when you're asking those type of a questions, you can go for a rank order correlation. Okay, if not, then you can use a correlation. There is a difference in Spearman rank correlation and Carl Pearson correlation. Carl Pearson correlation is talking about the relationship, whereas Spearman rank correlation is talking about only the rank correlations based on the rank given by the respondent. So accordingly, you can use. Whereas if you come to the non-parametric test, suppose if your data are not normally distributed, you can use a sign test, you can use Kolmogorov-Simrow test, you can use U test, man-Whitney U test when you're dealing with the two variables. In that, one variable should be a categorical variable, right? Kruskal values, 3 variables, where in that 2 variables should be a grouping variable. So in that case, you can use this. Suppose, sir, I'm dealing with the interval scale, because few questions, few variables I measured with the interval scales. You can use t-test, you can use ANOVA, you can use multivariate analysis of variance, and you can do a regressions, you can do a multiple correlations also. And when you come to the ratio, you can use only the CV, coefficient of variation. That's it. So these are the statistics that you can use for the scale which you are used in your questionnaire to measure your variables. Right? And next thing is hypothesis. So you already know about what is called parametric test and what is called non-parametric test. So you will be framing a hypothesis to prove your research. Right? Suppose after collecting the data, after feeding all the data in the SPSS, and you want to test whether the normality is there or not. So you have to go for a Kolmogorov-Simbrot test to test the normality. If normality is there, you can use all the parametric tests. If normality is not there, you can use a non-parametric test. But don't misunderstood that if normality is there for any kind of a variables, we can use parametric. No. For a 2 sample t-test, you should have 2 variables. Okay. Independent 2 sample t-test, you need to have 2 variables. Okay. Both should be one dependent, another one is independent. You can use either ordinal scale, right, or the interval scale. Similarly, paired sample t-test. Okay, and similarly, one-way ANOVA, you can have a 2 variables. Okay, with that one variable should be a categorical variable, grouping variable. When you want to use a two-way ANOVA, more than 2 variables should be there, where in that compulsory 2 variables should have a grouping variable. One should be a dependent. That condition should be there. If such conditions are fulfilled and there is a normality, go ahead with the parametric test. Suppose, sir, I have a 2 variable. One is dependent, another one is independent, where that independent variable, I have a category. That independent variable has been measured with the categorical data. Okay, but normality is not there. Go ahead with the man-weight new test. No need to do one-way ANOVA because your data is not normally distributed. If it is distributed, you can go ahead. If it is not normally distributed, go ahead with the man-weight. So I have more than 2 variables. That means 3 variables I have. In that, both the independent variables are categorical variables. In that case, you can use two-way ANOVA if it is normally distributed. If not, use Kruskal value H test. So like that, you have to define, you have to find out. Based on that, you have to use a test. Because when you are presenting your thesis, like they may ask you why you use a parametric, why you use a non-parametric. You should be able to justify that since the data are normally distributed. And when I'm dealing with this data, one is a dependent, one is an independent. That independent variable has been as a categorical data. That means I had grouped it. And my dependent variable has been measured through that independent variable. That's why I use one way. So this is how you have to justify. So this is a one proof for testing your hypothesis. We cannot, just like that, we cannot test our hypothesis. Right? When you are framing a hypothesis, you should be very careful that because your hypothesis will be helpful for you to give an interpretation for the data, the analysis that you have done in the SPSS. Without framing the hypothesis, without knowing what variable, what scale, definitely we cannot, just like that, we cannot interpret. So hypothesis testing is very important, right? And after the testing hypothesis, these are the few informations for your references to know. So what are the analysis I can do under parametric and non-parametric? So basically, descriptive statistics, it's basically record for all the research work. So you're going to give a statistical summary of the data and sample with the population with hypothetical value. If it is less than 30, greater than 30, you can use a t-test, z-test. If it is normally distributed, if not, you can use Wilcoxon test. If it is a 2 group, okay, which is not paired, you can go for independent. That means dependent, independent. Both are not relevant. Right, independent sample test you can use. In the same case, non-parametric you can use man-weight new test. If it is a 2 paired group, you can use a paired sample t-test. You can use a sample Wilcoxon sign test. If it is 3 or more than that, you can use one-way ANOVA if it is normally distributed. If not, you can use H test, Kruskal value. 3 or more to pair group, you can use ANOVA, or you can use fragment test in another non-parametric methods. Similarly, if you want to find the relationship between two variables, you can use a correlation coefficient. For non-parametric, you can use a rank correlations. And if you want to deal with at least one dependent variable and many dependent variable, one independent variable, you can go for linear regression or non-linear regression. Okay, multiple regression analysis. And similarly, yeah. So these are the basic analysis. So what I'm talking is only about the basic analysis, the standard analysis which you can do with the help of the SPSS. Okay, we have more than this. We all these things comes under univariate and bivariate analysis. Okay, we have a multivariate analysis also. When you are dealing with the more number of variables, we can go for factor analysis. We can go for MANOVA, MANCOVA, and you can go for cluster analysis when you are collecting the data from the different areas, right? Different region. And then you have a MDS, a multi-dimensional scaling, and you have a multiple regression. Under the multiple regressions, you have many things like logistic regression is there, and then partial correlation. All these things are comes under the multivariate analysis when you are using a more number of variables. Don't think that, or don't have an idea that we need to restrict to only this analysis. No, it's all depend on the variables that you are using for your research work. Sir, I have got 10 variables, and from that 10 variables, from that 15 variables, I want to find out 5 important variables which is required for research work. You can do factor analysis and you can confirm your variables and you can list out and you can measure it. And within that variables, I want to measure the associations or the relationship or the significant. You can go for multiple regression. Right. So like that, many things are there, but this is the basic, this is a standard statistical analysis you can do according to the data and the variables that you're using for a research work. Right. And next thing is, this is very, very important. So far I talked about variables and data, okay, which is very important for SPSS, because without knowing the what type of variables, what type of data in the SPSS software, you will not have an idea that how I should conclude or what analysis I should do. SPSS is a software. It can give any output. Sometimes it may show an error, but it will give the output. But is this the right output or is the right way to do it? It is purely based on that. If you have a knowledge, if you know what is variable, what is data, you can do it, right? And after knowing the variables and the data, the third important factor to work with SPSS software is significant value. That is called as a P value, right? When you are doing manually, okay, you may learn the statistics, right? When you are working a problem, right? When you are working a problem under chi-square or correlation regression, there are two variables are there, X is there, Y is there. Okay, and the chi-square test, if you take a one-tailed chi-square test, two-tailed chi-square test, you have a variables, okay, you have a data. So with that, you are done an analysis. For example, if you take chi-square test, observed frequency will be given. And for that, you have to find out the expected frequency by adding all the observed frequency and divided by the total number. You will get expected frequency. With that, if you find out the difference between the observed and expected frequency, and if you are squaring it, you will get one value, which is called as a chi-square value. That chi-square value should be compared with the table value. Right? In the statistical book, there will be a statistical table value will be there for all the level of significance for degrees of freedom. From that, you can take one table value, you can compare with the calculated value. When your calculated value is less than the table value, you will accept the null hypothesis. When your calculated value is greater than tabulated value, you will reject the null hypothesis. This is when you are working out the data in a manual way. But in SPSS, it is reverse, right? You have to interpret your hypothesis based on the P value which is there in the output table. In all the output table, what you are getting in the SPSS, there will be a one value called significant value, or it is called as a P value. By using that value only, you have to interpret. So how to interpret? So in SPSS, when you are doing the analysis with the help of the SPSS software, this is the condition that you have to follow. When your significant value is less than 0.01 or lies between 0.01 to 0.05 or less than 0.05, you have to reject the null hypothesis. Don't accept. In manually, you did when your calculated value is less than the tabulated value, you accept it. But here, when your P value is less than 0.01 or less than 0.05, or it lies between 0.1 to 0.05, you have to reject the null hypothesis. That is, you are accepting the alternate hypothesis. Suppose when your significant value or p value is greater than 0.05, in that case, you have to accept the null hypothesis at certain levels of significance. Either it may be a 5% or 1%. It depends upon the research. Right? Most probably, 5% level of significance is the standard. Okay, so 5% error is allowed and 95% accuracy is expected in the social science research, whereas in the scientific and all, they will expect 99% accuracy. That's why they are allowing 1% error. But for social research and all, 5% is standard. Okay, so better you can conclude, you can give an interpretation of the hypothesis based on the level of significance. So this is very, very important, right? And this is how you have to interpret. So when it is lies between 0.00 to 0.01, and the values will be marked with the 2 star, right? That means you have to reject the null hypothesis. Similarly, when it lies between 0.01 to 0.05, again you have to reject the null hypothesis. That means, what is your conclusions? You are concluding that alternate hypothesis, you are accepting alternate hypothesis. What is the alternate hypothesis? There is an association, there is a significance, there is a relationship. And when it is lies between 0.05 or more than 0.05, you have to accept the null hypothesis in that case. So this is a concept of the significant value. So all these things, whatever is there in the slide, right, p-value and the notation, it will be there in the output table. You will come to know in the upcoming days when you're getting hands-on training on each and every statistical analysis, right? You can able to resource person will show you the output table and they will explain you. In that you can see all these things. By using that p-value only, we are going to give a conclusion whether you are going to accept or reject. If you are accepting, if you are rejecting, you have to give the justification point. All right. So this is about the concept of a p-value. Okay. So this is about the basic things about what you are going to do in the SPSS. Okay. I hope you are clear with variable, data, and then the p-value, and then what type of test is required for what type of scales and the data, right? So this is very, very important. Before working with the SPSS, please have a clarity that this is what variables I use in my research work. This is what the type of data. Okay, this is what the scale I use for measuring all my variables. Accordingly, you can decide what analysis I can do. Don't think that, sir, if I do all the analysis, my research work or my thesis will looks good. No, don't think in that way. What are the analysis definitely you need for your variables, your data set? You can prove or you can do that analysis and you can write it in a proper way. You can interpret in a proper way. Okay, that's a quality way of doing the research work. Okay, don't think that I want to show more analysis. So making all the analysis and putting all the analysis in the SPSS, what are the data I gave, everything, whatever the data you give in the SPSS, the software will give you the output. There is no doubt at all. But the way you are giving the interpretation is that is a highlight point for your research work, because you already framed the hypothesis. To prove the hypothesis, you need to do the required analysis. So that's why I am just talking about all the basic things, right? So now we can discuss about, I'll show you what are the univariate analysis, bivariate analysis, multivariate analysis are there. And according to your type of data, according to your type of scale, you can decide. So I have a set of questions, and I have measured all these questions with this nominal scale. I had measured few questions with this interval scale, with this ordinal scale. Can I use this analysis? By going through these things, you can able to do. So if you take univariate analysis, right? As I already told you, metric and non-metric. Under that, you have a one sample, you have a two sample. So under one sample, you can do t-test, you can do z-test. If it is a non-metric, you can do all the frequencies, descriptive statistics, chi-square. If it is a two or more than two, you can do a two sample test, independent sample t-test, one way ANOVA. If it is a paired t-test, if it is a non-metric, you can do a two-tailed chi-square and u-test, h-test, sign test, Wilcoxon test. All these tests are available in the SPSS. In the analysis part, all these analysis are there. Okay, your duty is only to select the respective variable in the respective column and then execute the analysis and get the output. Right? You should be very clear in that part. Okay, without taking a independent variable with the category, don't go with the Marmite new test or don't go with the ANOVA. Right? By using a nominal scale, so I measured this variable with a nominal scale. Okay, can I go for ANOVA or can I go for a correlation or can I go for a U test, H test? No need. Right? No need those analysis. Right? So you have to select accordingly and then choose the analysis part. So this is things talking about the univariate analysis. Right? And this is about the multivariate analysis. So I have more than two variables. Okay. So what are analysis I can do? So you can categorize the analysis like independent and then the dependent. Okay. Under dependent, we have one dependent variable, and you have a two independent variable. You have more than two independent variable. Accordingly, you can choose the analysis. So if you take dependent variable 1, 2 or more than 2, see, you can use a multiple regression analysis, you can use multi-discriminant analysis, and if it is a 2 or more than 2, you can use canonical or MANOVA. If it is more than that, 3 or 4 or 5 more than that, you can use SEM, structural equation SEM model, to give a goodness of fit, to find out that which variables are fit for your research. Right? So all these things you can able to do under the multivariate analysis technique. Okay, we are not going to cover the multivariate techniques. What we are going to discuss the next 6 days is like a univariate and bivariate analysis. Okay, which is the standard statistical tools which is required for the research work nowadays. Right? And according to your variables, according to your study, you can apply all these multivariate techniques also. It is not like only you have to use univariate and bivariate. Okay, if you have a good variables and you have a more number of variables, and I measure the variables with the different scales, and I collected the data from different region. I categorize the data different region cluster. Okay, north, south, like that. You can apply cluster analysis, right? And I want to show that exact research model, which variables is having a good for a research work, and which variable is having a goodness of fit. For that, you can use a SEM model, and you can prove whether the model is fit or not. Right? So all these things you can do as a multivariate techniques. Right? So all these things are the analysis which you have to do for the data that you are collected. And similarly, if it is independent, okay, it is a variables, you can use a factor analysis and get the confirmation on those factors, and you can list out and you can give the interpretation. If it is a cases, like I had collected the respondents, I collected the data from different region, different area, okay, cluster analysis. Okay, if it is a objects metric and non-metric, you can use a multidimensional or correspondence analysis. This object tools and all will be used for the psychological study, especially the people those who are into the psychological field, right? They developed the psychological model. Okay, tools already developed. For example, now there is a psychometer analysis is there for the to analyze the psychological aspects of the every individuals, whether if he is ready to accept or not. Okay, what is the response he will be giving for the particular question? In that cases, they will be using this MDS and correspondence analysis, right? But for our social science research work and all, most probably you can see factor analysis, cluster analysis. It's very rare. Or if you have done a study in a different region, those people only they'll be using this. All right. Um, can we use SPSS for SEM model? Yes, sir, because SPSS, after feeding all your data in the SPSS, okay, you should have a AMOS. From that AMOS, you import the data from the SPSS which you already given as a data, the input as a data in the SPSS, and then from that you can import and you can draw the variables. There are different things are there, right? You have to draw the variables with the oval shape, okay, and then with the rectangle box for dependent, independent, for extraneous variable, and for predictive variable, like that. There is a conditions in AMOS. So you can use those chart, those diagram, and you can draw the variables column, oval shape, rectangle, okay, square. And after that, you fit that variables into each and every shape, and then import the data that are from the SPSS and go for a model fit. It will show you which variables having a influence on the other variable, what is the value, whether it is a positive or negative. By seeing the model, you can say that this model is good for research work. Okay, it has a good model of fit. Suppose if any one of the models or any one of the variables showing a negative value, that in that cases you can remove that particular variable and you can show the remaining variable as a model, right? So with the help of SPSS, you can do the same model also. Okay, so these are the analysis which you need to follow to do the for your data that are collected. Okay, so I think that's it about the end of the day. So now it's a time for a question and answer. So if you have any doubts, you can put the questions in your chat box. I have covered only the basic, the fundamentals which you need to understand to execute the statistical analysis with the help of the SPSS. Without knowing all these things, you will not have a clear idea that what analysis you have to do for variable, which type of variable, which type of data. So that's why we are a plan that first day can be like a basic, okay, so that the people can able to understand that which are the things that they need to learn before working with the SPSS. So from my side, that's all from my side. So now it's a time for question and answer. Any doubts, any queries, you can unmute and you can ask and you can put in the chat box.
If any of the participants have any doubts, you can either raise your hand or you can type out the question into the chat.
Somu sir, good
Yes,
evening.
sir. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yes, Somu sir, actually most of my research work I am using 5-point scale.
Okay.
And just I want to once again, if we can explain the difference between ordinal data and interval data. So now the professor explained about it, like the 5-point scale can be come under ordinal scale also and the interval scale also. So most of my study I am using 5-point scale. So how can we differentiate that? Can you explain?
Sir,
once again
ordinal scale, okay, you are measuring that particular variable with then certain items, like I want to measure with 1 to 5, 1 to 10. And you are defining that what is that 1, what is that 5. So non-metric, right? Qualitative. Whereas you are talking about interval is, it's like a quantitative. Okay, already, for example, sometimes you ask some questions with the open-ended question, right? And people has responded, and you are making them as a group like 10 to 20 or 21 to 30. So you are grouping. So it comes another quantitative, right? So in that case, you can use the interval scale, but ensure that when you are categorizing it, the differences should be equal. That means when you are taking 5 differences for the first interval range, it should be the same for the second, third, fourth. But whereas in the ordinal scale, we have set 1 to 5 point I want to measure. And I am defining, one, I can define that it can be a strongly agree, it can be highly satisfied, it can be most likely, it can be most relevant. So that comes under the ordinal and then interval scale.
Okay, thank you, Professor. And one more question, Professor. If
Yes,
with that ordinary data, so can we use factor and regression analysis, right? We can
yes,
use it,
you can use.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Yes.
But ensure that when you're using a factor analysis, all the factors, under each factor, you may have a list of lot of items. All the items should be measured with the same scale only. 1 to 5 means 1 to 5 only. You cannot differ. When you are differing, you cannot use the factor analysis.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. Yes.
Soma sir, in the meanwhile, there was a question in the chat. Difference between mediating and moderating variables. What is the difference between mediating and moderating variables?
Yes. Yeah. So this is what I explained you, right, sir? Mediating variable, the particular variable, its presence, right? Okay. It cannot be measured directly. It is influenced by both the variable. That's why I explained you, right? Sir, I can able to measure my income, right? Based on that, because income is depend upon the education. So that is clear. Income is depend upon your education. If you're educated, you will get a very good income, right? But the income, the range of income is as well as your job designation. Or if you take better occupation, that will be the intervening variable. If you study well, you will be in a good position, right? If it is a good position, definitely you will get a good income, right? That comes the mediating way. That means acting as a mediator. Okay, it is influencing both the variable, right, directly. Okay, if I am studied well, definitely my occupation is good, right? If my occupation is good, definitely I'll get a good income. Whereas in the moderator variable, if you see the moderator variable, if I have interest only, I will go to the library. So interest plays a very important role, okay, in their performance of the uh, students' performance in the exam, right? Without interest, okay, I will not go to the library, which will affect my performance also. So that is the difference with the mediator and the moderator. It's like a mediating variable which is influencing both the variable directly. Moderator through interest, library facilities, then the performance. Right here, interest. If I'm interested, but I'm not going to the library, will my performance will be improved? No. If you are interested, it will influence you to go to the library. If you are going to the library regularly, then it will make my performance good in the exam. That comes from the moderator variable.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Soma sir, there was another question.
Yes, sir.
The selection of analysis, is it based on scale alone? That was one question from the participant.
Okay. So as I told you, right, not only on the scale, okay, scale, variable. For example, it is not like you are not collecting the data only with the help of the scale, right? You are having a variables. You have collected the variables to the literature review, and you are defining that how I want to measure the variable. You are defining that this is a variable I want to measure in this scale. This is a variable I want to measure in this type of scale. So accordingly, you can choose the analysis. It is not like your analysis only depend upon the scale. And don't think that, sir, can we set up a scale by ourselves? No. The variables and the setting a scales for measuring those variables there are certain standard tools are there. It is already proven. You have to follow the same thing. You cannot define by yourself. So accordingly, if the variables is like a dependent, independent, discrete or continuous or mediator or moderating variable, if you want to measure that particular variable, you can design that, sir, I want to measure this particular variable by using nominal scale. Okay, by using interval scale, by using ordinal scale, because based on this only I'm going to find out the significance, I'm going to find out the relationship, I'm going to find out the association. So you can determine based on the scales and the variable.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. The intermittent variable is nothing but is extraneous variable. When we use the segregation analysis, we come back to that term called as
yes, sir.
Error term or the
error term. Yes.
We can use that as
yes, right. Sir? So when you are going with the SEM model, there you have to place the externals and variable, all those predictive variables.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
If any of the participants have any queries, you may raise your hand. Sir would be happy to clarify your queries. Any other participant has any queries?
Good evening, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Sir, can you give one more example for me? Ratio scale, I wanted one more example to understand it better.
Ratio scale, right? For example, when you are dealing with the demographic factors like height, weight, right? And I want to measure I want to find out the average age of height or weight 2 times or more than the average value, or 10 times more than the other value, other variables. So in such cases, we'll be using ratio. But ratio, social science research, we will not. For example, if you take one sample t-test where you have only one set of data, and they'll be giving the population mean. That means they know the population. They will say that what is the population average. Okay, it is called as a mu in the statistical term. They will given the mu value, mean value, and they will ask you to test that whether the data that you are collecting is more than the average value or less than the average value, or equal to average value, or not equal to average value. Right? In that cases, they may measure the variables with the scales, with the ratio scales. Okay, where 1 is to 2 or 2 is to 3. When you compare first and second, the ratios will be the same, second and third, third and fourth. In that case, after collecting the data, they have set the population mean mu value, and they're asking you to test whether it is more than or less than or not equal or equal. In that cases, they will go for the ratio scale, but most probably we will not deal with the one sample t-test, or we will not deal with the ratio scales, because all our variables, okay, will be measured either with the nominal or ordinal. Intervals based on the category. When you are measuring the variables with certain category, okay, no need to use interval. But suppose if it's open-ended questions and you want to categorize, you can make it as an interval.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, will you be sharing this PPT in the WhatsApp group daily, sir, the materials?
Yes, ma'am. We will be updating all the PPTs as well as the videos at the end of the...
the recorded sessions.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful session, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
If there are no other queries, then we can conclude the session for today. On behalf of the Department of Management, we want to thank Somasundaram sir for taking time out from his busy schedule and sharing with us his rich experience in the area of research. Thank you so much. Definitely, we all agree that your session this evening has been very insightful, and it had also been an eye-opener for many of us. So thank you, sir, for sharing with all of us your vast knowledge. So on behalf of all the participants and the department, we wholeheartedly thank you. Dear participants, with that, we have come to the end of the session for today. We request you to kindly join us tomorrow. For the session tomorrow, Dr. Leelavati would be starting off with the hands-on sessions on SPSS. So today, Somasundaram sir had walked us through the theoretical constructs and the framework required for research, but tomorrow onwards, it would be a practical-oriented sessions. So we request you to kindly join at 5:30. And when you're joining, please also ensure that you have the SPSS software installed on your devices, on your computers, on systems, to make sure that the sessions are beneficial. So once again, dear participants, we thank you all for your patient listening and participation with all of us. We look forward in seeing you tomorrow at 5:30. The Zoom credentials would remain the same. Please join us. We also request you to, while joining, please make sure that you join using the codes which has been shared. For the external participants, we would be monitoring your participation with the help of the codes which has been shared. For the participants from Kristu Jayanti Autonomous College, we would be monitoring your attendance through the college email ID. So please make sure that you follow the instructions appropriately. Once again, we thank all of you. Wishing you all a wonderful evening. Thank you. Looking forward to see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you.